I'm caught between hell and a fence post. I need you to bail me out once again.
The Chrisleys were once one of the richest families in reality TV.
Because I just volunteered to give money away.
Until everything came crashing down for them when the parents, Todd and Julie Chrisley, were arrested for some pretty insane crimes.
Reality TV stars Todd and Julie Chrisley are going to prison.
And even though they've claimed their innocence for years,
what my parents are going to serve due to being convicted off of lies.
it has now been revealed that not only were they found guilty, but Todd will be going to prison for 12 years and Julie will be going to prison for 7 years, and the crimes involved in this case are honestly insane. I mean, they're pretty hard to wrap your mind around, so I spent hours reading all of the court documents and trying to get a handle of what exactly happened so that I can explain exactly what happened with this family and make it a little bit easier to understand, and you honestly will not believe any of this. So it all started years ago with Todd and Julie. According to court documents, they started taking out fraudulent loans years before Chrisley Knows Best even started. Now, according to these documents, they would go to local banks in their area with false bank statements that made it look like they had way more money than they actually did, and for years they began taking out loans from multiple different banks, and according to the documents, they began taking out loans to pay off their other loans until they couldn't get any more loans, and that's when Todd filed for bankruptcy, and all in all, they took out $30 million in fraudulent loans, but that wasn't even everything that they did. They also lied to the IRS. Now, apparently, they physically cut and pasted false documents together, and I don't mean that they did on a computer. No, they took out scissors, cut up legal documents, and pasted them together to make it look like they had way less income so that they wouldn't have to pay as much in taxes. And not even to mention that Todd said that he was a Florida citizen so that he wouldn't have to pay income taxes. And somehow, all of this is just the tip of the iceberg for these two, because this is where their defense comes in and everything gets very strange. So in their defense, Todd and Julie claimed that everything that was done, yes, all of those dozens of loans that added up to $30 million and their false documents to avoid taxes and Todd lying about living in Florida, was supposedly all created by their business partner, Mark Braddock, who Todd claimed was obsessed with him. And according to Todd and Julie, they had no idea that he was doing any of this, and I don't know how you could get $30 million worth of loans taken out in your name and not know about it, but that's neither here nor there, because there were dozens of emails where Todd and Julie were discussing the fraudulent loans and bank statements, but they claimed that it was Mark hacking their emails, and who knows? I mean, maybe it was, but it's just too weird, especially because Mark also claimed that he and Todd had an affair for many years, which was a pretty crazy twist for a bank fraud trial, and Todd of course denied this and said that it was another example of Mark's obsession with him. And there are so many things about this case that just does not add up to me. I mean, first of all, Todd and Julie clearly knew that they were doing something wrong, so why were they emailing so many different people about it in the first place? I mean, wouldn't you think that they wouldn't want to have a paper trail when they inevitably got caught? Or did they think that they were above the law? And second of all, why didn't they think that they would get caught? I mean, that is a lot of money to just steal, and not to think for 1 second that they were going to get caught, which brings me to my next question. Why did they go on reality TV? I mean, did they really just think that they were that safe, or that they would be safe if they were in the public eye? I mean, it seems like an obvious way to draw attention to themselves and get caught even faster than they already were going to. We all saw it on TV. In the first episode, Todd bragged about how they spend $300,000 on clothes every year, and it caused the whole country to wonder, how do the Chrisleys make all their money? And according to Google Trends, from the day that the show premiered on March 11th, 2014, until the day that Todd and Julie were indicted on August 2019, the Chrisleys and money were searched together 2,049 times. I mean, it was always at the forefront of people's minds as we watched their extravagance on TV with no real reason, and now we know where it actually came from. And it's crazy to think that if they hadn't gone on TV TV and flaunted their wealth, it might have taken a lot longer for them to get caught. And another thing that I just don't understand about this case is that the Chrisleys did have money. According to their court documents, they were bringing in $1 million per month from their real estate investments, which sounds like it was just a lot of flipping properties during the recession, and maybe that $1 million, per month wasn't all take-home pay, but how much did they really need? I mean, was Todd just being greedy? Because I'm sure that they were making more than enough to support their wealthy lifestyle, but maybe they just kept wanting more and couldn't keep up with their spending. And now, this all sounds absolutely insane, right? But there's actually a whole other piece to this puzzle that isn't really being talked about, and believe me, when you find out about it, your mind will be blown. So Todd's dad, Gene, was supposedly a lifelong criminal. He spent a lot of Todd's childhood in jail, and it's funny how that was never once been brought up on the show, right? And the family is always talking about how amazing Todd's dad was. Meanwhile, he had been arrested for burglary, armed robbery, larceny, motor vehicle theft, assaulting a police officer, escaping from prison, check fraud, and even more crimes in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Alabama over the course of his life. And allegedly, he spent decades in prison because of all his crimes. So how did Todd really watch his dad get caught and go to prison for some pretty horrible crimes and deal with the emotional damage of growing up with his father in prison, only to turn around and make the same mistakes that his dad did? I mean, you would think that he'd learn from everything he went through with his dad and want to do better and want to do things legally, not create an entire empire based on fraud that would ultimately lead to him spending 12 years in prison and keep him away from his kids and elderly mother. And not only did he commit these crimes, but he still won't admit it. Now, I don't understand any of this, but I really don't get this part, because supposedly if they had admitted guilt and apologized, their sentence would have been much lighter, like maybe a year or two. But because they didn't admit guilt and because they didn't show any remorse, the judge gave them a very harsh sentence. So why are they clinging to their innocence when there is no evidence showing that Mark Braddock did this behind their backs besides their own stories? And they can tell the story as many times as they want, but unless they had concrete proof that that was the case, I don't understand how they thought they'd convince the jury with just their words when they had all the evidence against them. I mean, what are they gaining by holding on to their innocence? It seems like instead they've lost everything. And not only are they going to be spending the next decade in prison and miss out on so many life events for their family, but they also have to sell all of their assets to pay the $17 million fine that they were hit with. And do they just have a horrible legal team? I mean, why would they think this was the way to go? It seems like it's the path that is going to cause the most damage to their lives, with very little positives. But I'm not a lawyer, so maybe there's something I'm missing. And another piece of this case that was extremely strange was Lindsay, because yes, the family's feud with Lindsay made its way into the case. In the court documents, she claimed that her dad and Chase were blackmailing her with an inappropriate tape of herself so that she wouldn't talk to the people who were investigating Todd and Julie, and this went on for years. But then, as we all know, they made up a few months ago, and Lindsay actually testified in support of her parents, even though the court documents told a completely different story. So what is the truth here, and where does their relationship go from here? I mean, as far as we know, Lindsay and Kyle were definitely two of the main whistleblowers here, and I have to imagine that it's hard for them to act like a normal family right now when that's the elephant in the room. Even if they have all supposedly reconciled, I mean, there's something weird going on with that part of the case, and I don't think we have the whole story yet. And guys, I have to say, this is one of the strangest celebrity court cases of all time, and I think we all always thought the Chrisleys were slightly full of it, and yes, they are hilarious and entertaining, and they seem to be fairly genuine and nice people, even if they are a little obsessed with wealth. But I don't think anyone could have ever predicted that behind the scenes, a $30 million bank fraud case was just waiting to be exposed. But what do you guys think about all this? Guys, definitely let me know in the comments below.